Winning in the NFL is all about special players making special plays in the game's biggest moments. Now, the Chicago Bears have plenty of very good players, but how many guys do they have that you can count on to come up with the clutch play when the team needs it the most?
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. On the show today, I want to look at the top level talent on this Chicago Bears roster, because I think we have a lot of guys in this team who are very good players and that you like and you root for and you're not looking to upgrade from them. But how many of these players are those truly special game-changing players? Do you have enough players that if you get to a NFC championship game or a Super Bowl and it's fourth down and you need somebody to step up and make a play, and it's not about the play call, because something breaks down or whatever it is, right? It's about, in those big moments, it's about the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's, right? It's about can a player just make a big play when the team needs it most, because they're that special talent that just rises up in those moments and goes above and beyond. And I think the Bears have some guys. I think a couple guys jump out. I was like, yeah, they can do that. And then there's a few guys where it's maybe they can, but we haven't necessarily seen it. And what really this gets at is the question of coaching, right? How much does coaching play into this when you've got guys who haven't played as well the last couple of seasons under Matt Eberflus and company, but maybe with Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen, you can get more of that big-time playmaking out of them and have them play more like that special type of player that the Bears need. So I want to go through some guys on offense, some guys on defense, and then some other younger players that are definitely not there yet. There's no debate that just now, but can they get there? Do they have it in them to become those types of players with further development down the line? I think we've seen this season already, in year one of Caleb Williams, a certain level of clutch playmaking, right? It doesn't mean he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL today by any means, but that in the fourth quarter, when it's third and long and you just need a first down, throw the play call out the window, throw the defense out of the window, he's just going to find a way to make a play. And it's not always pretty, and it's not always how it was drawn up on paper. In fact, it's rarely how it was drawn up on paper. But whether it's a scramble or whether it's improvising with a receiver downfield, he has multiple times already as a rookie found ways to step up and make a play to put his team in position to win games. It was how they beat the Green Bay Packers in Week 18, and we saw it multiple times throughout the course of the season, at the end against the Commanders, putting them in a lead in that game, against the Packers up to the blocked field goal there, getting the Bears into the overtime against the Minnesota Vikings, or at the end of the Lions game, right? 3 or 4 or 5 different games over the course of this season. Caleb Williams steps up and makes a special play in a special moment. And that's what you need from your quarterback position for sure. You need your quarterback to have special in him. And the Bears certainly have that from Caleb Williams. They still need more from Caleb Williams moving forward, but he's got that special in him. But you also need, those weapons, that receiver, whether it's a receiver or a running back, if it's 4th and 2 and there's 20 seconds left on the clock and you need this first down, who are you going to? Who's the receiver that is going to get open, going to make the catch? You just trust that it's go time, and you need that playmaking weapon for you right there. I think about this in the context of the Super Bowl that we just saw, where it felt like there were times when Patrick Mahomes was in a crunch situation and needed a receiver to make a play. And Travis Kelce drops passes. DeAndre Hopkins drops passes. Juju Smith-Schuster didn't do much for them in the game. Like, eventually Xavier Worthy got going, but like the Chiefs, even with Travis Kelce, who was kind of taken away by the defense a little bit here, like they just didn't have that go-to, you need a play. Can someone besides just Patrick Mahomes, like, can you get someone out there to make that play? And it wasn't there for them. Whereas like the Eagles could go to Saquon Barkley. They can go to A.J. Brown. Like even sometimes Devonta Smith, like they have playmakers. And by the way, this is not exclusively an offensive conversation. We'll talk about guys in the defense where it's 4th and 2 and you need a stop. Is there a pass rusher that's going to take over? Is there a coverage player? Is there a line? We'll talk about what it looks like on that side of the ball, but it's easier to first envision and talk through an offense, right? It's 4th and 2. Who's your playmaker? Who is the ball going to? Because Caleb can't do it all by himself. He either has to throw it to somebody or in some cases, hand it off to somebody. And can you trust your playmakers to be big time special players? Like, is DJ Moore that guy? We've seen DJ Moore be a 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL. DJ Moore is a very good wide receiver in the NFL. There has always been a lingering sort of debate on like what it means to be a true number one wide receiver and whether he is that or not. I think he is a true number one wide receiver. Is he a player though? A 4th down in the Super Bowl, Caleb's got to get the ball into this guy's hands because this is the game changer. This is the playmaker. This is the difference maker in that moment. And I'm just not sure. I think so. We think he's capable of it, but we haven't necessarily seen that per se. And some of that has been because of coaching, right? Because of play calling, because of the routes they're being asked to run. And sometimes then the offensive line becomes a problem and then Caleb Williams can't, it's not as though it's purely that player's fault. So is it then that if Ben Johnson can come in and scheme up players better and they can fix the offensive line, does DJ Moore become that player? Same conversation with Cole Kmet. Like, these guys are right on that borderline for me where it's like, yeah, they're very good. You're not looking to upgrade from them because they're bums. Not at all. But, it's 3rd and 5 and you need to convert this 1st down. Is Cole Kmet that go-to clutch weapon that Caleb Williams knows if he throws the ball in there, even if it's tight window, even if it's contested catch, coverage is all over him, he's big and strong and can he hold on to the ball? And I think early on in his career, there were moments when we felt like, Cole couldn't hold on to some of those tough catches, and it was like maybe he's not that guy. But we've seen in the last couple of years, especially 2 years ago, now 2023, there were clutch moments from Cole Kmet. Like, I think he's in there. Like, you're never going to mistake him for Travis Kelce. He's not that level of tight end, but can you make a special play in a special moment? We've seen glimpses of that from Cole Kmet, and maybe in a better offense, he can do more and can be more, but that's kind of the question I want to dig at here today, right? Like, are DJ Moore and Cole Kmet difference makers? Are they game changers? Are they clutch players in the biggest moment? Or do the Bears still need to find that weapon? That these guys are very good and they're complementary pieces who can, be a key part of a super successful team. But when push comes to shove, are they your go-to guys on offense? Can DeAndre Swift step up and be that go-to back in the backfield? We certainly didn't see that this past season. No one's mistaking him for that. But like in a better offense with a better offensive line, like, all right, it's 4th and 1. Can you give the ball to DeAndre Swift and trust that he's a game changer? He's a difference maker. He's a playmaker. Or when you need a breakaway run to just open this game up and get the running game going, like, can DeAndre Swift be that spark? Can these guys be spark plugs? Can they be game winners that seal a victory with playmaking with the ball in their hands? That's a question I want to see answered this season. And I think Ben Johnson coming in will give them a chance to show us whether they are those players or whether we get through the season and say, man, the Bears need to make that one splash move for a playmaker, a wide receiver, a T. Higgins. I mean, I don't know if Higgins is that guy either, though, right? Like, there aren't that many of these guys, and they're not easy to find. So can you coach them up from the guys you have? Well, that's the question we want to start seeing answered this season. Same thing on the defensive side of the ball, whether it's the clutch sack, the clutch tackle for loss, the clutch interception, the clutch pass breakup. Do the Bears have enough game-changing difference makers on defense? I think they've got guys capable of it, but I think it's a similar conversation about guys that are kind of teetering on that line between maybe they could be, maybe they aren't. we'll discuss and then also look at some young guys that could rise into these roles in the future next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because on FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss that opening tip-off, or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can always stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. So whether it's this NBA season or the NHL season, both rounding towards the playoffs, college basketball with the big tournament right around the corner, baseball season's coming back here shortly as well, soccer, tennis, hockey, boxing, you name it, they've got it all in the FanDuel app. It's super easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So on offense, you've got Caleb Williams showing you evidence of being that clutch playmaking game changer. You've got guys like DJ Moore and Cole Kmet, and we'll talk about Roma Dunze a little bit later on as a future possibility there, right? That maybe they can, maybe they can't, and we'll see if as the team gets better, if they're able to rise into those roles with some real coaching and infrastructure around them. And I think it's a similar conversation on defense, where it feels to me like Jalen Johnson is pretty proven clutch playmaker, right? And like difference maker, game changer. Not in the sense that Jalen Johnson is always going to come up with, say, the big interception when you need to, but that's not necessarily like, cornerbacks can't just manufacture interceptions, right? The QB has to throw it in their direction before they can make the interception. It's not about turnovers per se, but it's like, it's the inverse of what we just talked about. It's 4th and 2. The other team needs a key first down. Can Jalen Johnson erase their #1 wide receiver? Like, that's the kind of difference-making, game-changing. You know that, hey, it's 4th and 2, and they want to throw it to this wide receiver. They want to throw it to Devontae Adams. They want to throw it to Amon-Ra St. Brown. They want to throw it to, Jamar Chase, whoever the player is, right? And Jalen Johnson's on him. He's going to shut him down. He's going to be covered. He's not going to have an easy catch. Like, that is taken care of. That's the kind of game-changing difference-making I'm talking about. Like, even if he's not actually targeted, right? There's no pass breakup. There's no interception. When he just, in the biggest moment, does his job at a super high level, that means you're not throwing to that receiver. It's not like turnover, pass breakup type of game-changing, but it is changing the game for your defense by affecting the opposing offense. Jalen Johnson, to me, is that level of player proven on this Bears defense. Kind of like we talked about with Caleb Williams, where it's like, okay, we've seen this player make big clutch plays in the biggest moments against the biggest opponents. That's great. You can kind of have some faith and trust that that's more or less settled in that front. The rest of this Bears defense has guys that, I think can do it, but do they and will they? And, if you're in the NFC Championship game or whatever, and you need that big play moment in the Super Bowl or whatever, like Montez Sweat, is he that pass rusher who it's third and 10, and the opposing offense is trying to stay alive, and he comes in and makes that clutch sack. He whips the left tackle right off the line of scrimmage, free run to the quarterback, levels him, maybe pops the ball out, maybe not. But like those big pass rushes in the biggest moments of the game, when you need somebody on defense to make a play, right? It's not about scheming up the perfect blitz to get somebody home. It's not about calling the perfect coverage to bait the interception. It's just individual player excels at their job and changes the game, changes the play with their effort on that play. And I feel like somebody like I'm totally just lost the pass rusher's name. Montez Sweat, Jesus. I feel like somebody like Montez Sweat, like when he first came to Chicago last year, it felt like there was maybe a moment or two like that. I don't stick out in my brain like these distinctive, like the moments that Montez Sweat won the game for the Bears defense. Like he had a couple of like strip sacks over the course of the season and made those big plays for this team and made some other important sacks and important moments. But again, like, put ourselves in the Super Bowl, right? It's fourth and 8, and if you make the stop, it's game over. Is Montez Sweat going to be the guy who rises to that moment, makes that play, and sacks the quarterback? Or even if you don't sack the quarterback, right? But beats the offensive lineman, makes the quarterback step up and move away out of the pressure, flushes him out of the pocket, makes him throw it away. Like, whatever that looks like, is Sweat that playmaker? And it feels like he's capable of that. It feels like we've seen him scratch the surface of that. But it's like we talked about with DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. It's like, is he capable of more? Can he be coached up into doing more? Or is there a ceiling for him as a player that's just like, he's a very good pass rusher, he's just not that guy? Like, do the Bears still need Myles Garrett or Micah Parsons? Like, of course, we want to add dynamic playmakers wherever you could, but like, do they need that clutch playmaking guy, or is Montez Sweat that number one clutch playmaking guy, and you just need complementary pass rushers to help him? But you know that when push comes to shove in the biggest moment of the game, Sweat's going to find a way to give you that big pass rush to make that big play on the opposing quarterback. That's still a question. The answer is not no, but it's not definitively yes either, and that's what's still up in the air. Is Kyler Gordon approaching this place? We've seen him make clutch plays in run defense, to be physical, and on screen passes to come up and make a big tackle for a loss. And, I don't know that he's as shut down in coverage as Jalen Johnson has been, but he's been a very good slot cornerback. Is he a game-changing, difference-making player, or just a very good slot cornerback? I don't know. Like, again, he's still young. We're entering the 4th year of his NFL career. These guys are not finished products by all means, but like, he's kind of teetering on that line for me. And the other one that's a really big open question is Tremaine Edmunds. We've talked about this a little bit on the podcast in the last couple weeks about his salary. He is the 3rd highest paid linebacker in football. You are paying Tremaine Edmunds to be this type of player, right? He is the 2nd or 3rd most expensive contract on this Bears roster. 4th, in terms of the salary cap hit he's costing this season. 4th best player on your roster. Your most expensive players are Montez Sweat, DJ Moore, Jalen Johnson, Tremaine Edmunds, and then there's quite a bit of a jump down before you get to Cole Kmet at 5. But Sweat making $25 million this year, DJ Moore making $25 million this year, Jalen Johnson making $21 million, and Tremaine Edmunds making $17.5. If you're paying these guys that much money, they all need to be clutch, difference-making, special players who in the biggest moments of the biggest games will step up and make those plays, because that's what other players at similar salary ranges do for their teams. And the Bears can't pay these guys to not get that level of play from them. Sweat has to step up into that role. As the Bears' most expensive player, he needs to be one of your biggest, most clutch playmakers. Jalen Johnson's already there. DJ Moore is pretty close to there, but Tremaine Edmunds, all right, your 3rd highest paid linebacker in football. If it's 4th and 3, is he going to cover the tight end perfectly over the middle of the field? If they're running the ball on 4th and 1, is he going to read the run properly, shoot the right gap, and make the tackle for a loss? Do you trust that in those biggest moments, Tremaine Edmunds is always going to make those plays? I think we've seen flashes of it, his last year in Buffalo. There were moments of it early on in Chicago. I don't think this past season he looked like that guy. And that's what I want to see. Like, this year, Dennis Allen comes in a little bit of a different scheme. He's got to adjust to it a little bit, but like, can he justify that salary and then also like confirm, like, yes, are you a difference-making, game-changing player? I keep using those same words over and again, but I really want to hammer it home. Like, you need special players on both sides of the ball to make special plays. And you've got a couple of them that we're pretty sure about. Got a couple that we're on the fence about. And then, do you need more guys to step up in this? Because you don't need every player at every position to be that special player, right? And you're never going to have every wide receiver, every running back, every tight end, every linebacker, every pass rusher, right? You just need to sprinkle them in around the roster. You need a great quarterback to be clutch. You need a great receiver, a weapon that you can go out and be clutch. You need a great pass rusher that can go out and be clutch. You need a great coverage player to go out and be clutch. And then ideally, like, another one of a few of those, right? If you can have 2 weapons on offense plus quarterback, and then like 2 pass rushers or a pass rusher and 2 coverage guys and maybe a linebacker who's kind of somewhere in the middle. Like, you want to get to, 5, 6, 7 of these kind of clutch players. And if we go Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, maybe Jalen Johnson, Montez Sweat, that's 4. And then can you get Cole Kmet to be 5? Can you get Kyler Gordon or Tremaine Edmunds to be 6? then all of a sudden you can look around the roster and say, okay, you've got big-time players and big-time plays that can change games. One game changer alone on a roster can't do it by himself. A couple of game changers can get you pretty close, but you need like a series of difference makers across your roster. And the Bears have a bunch of guys that are close to that. And I want to see if coaching with a better coaching staff can elevate them there, or if we're going to get through the season a little bit frustrated, feeling like, man, the Bears just don't quite have enough talent. They've got good players, but those good players aren't good enough because you need more special players. And then you have to start making more drastic splash type of changes like Myles Garrett trade, where you mortgage the future to go get that guy because you just feel like your talent isn't where it needs to be. The other side of this is developing players so that the young players who are ascending can keep ascending into those types of roles in the future, even if they're not there now. So I think there's a few guys on this roster that, not this year, but maybe in a couple years, could start to enter this conversation if they ascend on a super positive trajectory with the right coaching in Chicago. So we'll take a look at what the future playmakers of the Chicago Bears might look like next on Locked On Bears. Every time you draft a player high in the draft and you see a player with young developmental flashes early in their careers, like, you always hope for every player to aspire to be one of these types of players, right? You hope that every draft pick pans out to be that difference maker, especially all the early draft picks. And we know that that's not the case, and that a player can still be a good draft pick even if they don't become one of these elite level, top level talents that it is coming up with the biggest clutch plays in the most important moments. But at the same time, you don't want to get too ahead of yourselves and crown all these guys future stars before we've actually seen them be stars. But I think when I think about someone like Rome Odunze, we mentioned him briefly earlier, right? Like, today, he's not that player. There were times at Washington, though, in college, for Michael Penix, he was, it's a big key clutch down and distance situation. Quarterback floats up the fade ball to Rome Odunze. It's one-on-one, 50-50 ball. We need you to make this play. Go up and get it. And he did. And I think we've seen him make plays similar to that in Chicago. Not a ton, but also wasn't used in the same type of role by any means. So I think we see in his college play and in his physical traits, Rome Odunze has the potential there. He's not there yet, and he's not a bust if he doesn't become that kind of player. Like, yeah, he needs to become a very good player, but if he becomes a very good player and not a game changer, that's still worth the 9th overall pick where they drafted him. Like, that's okay. This is not a requirement for these guys in order to be justifying where their draft investment was. Now, when you get into the big contracts like Montez Sweat or Tremaine Edmunds, like, those guys got to justify those numbers, because that's what separates the better teams from the worst teams is how much you're getting out of your truly top players. But I think Rome Odunze has the route running ability, the hands, the speed, the toughness to be able to be that type of player in the future, with all of the important asterisks of getting proper coaching and being used properly in the offense and building that connection with Caleb Williams and staying healthy and the offensive line being able to, like, yeah, if everything falls into place the right way, I think Rome Odunze can be one of those guys. He can be a 1,000-yard receiver. He can be a clutch playmaker for your team and give you another weapon that, hey, it's 4th down. And even if they have a great corner who's going to take away DJ Moore, you can trust Rome Odunze on the other side to make a play. Find a way to get open and make a play. I think he has that in him. He to me feels like perhaps the most likely guy on the roster that can elevate into this role. And it shouldn't be a surprise when he's like the highest draft pick on the roster, not named Caleb Williams. Now, some other guys who maybe could get to this conversation, like, can Gervon Dexter on the defensive line become that? We're talking about interior pass rushers here. There aren't very many of them in the NFL as a whole that are that type of game changer, especially, with Aaron Donald retired. It's probably guys you can count on one hand of a defensive tackle, an interior pass rusher who, in the biggest moments of the biggest games, can step up and make those plays. I mean, even guys like Fletcher Cox are getting up there. We don't need to, it's not about sort of ranking them and trying to find the exact number of those players in those positions per se, but I do think it's not necessarily realistic to expect Gervon Dexter to become that guy, but you draft Gervon Dexter because he has a bunch of rare physical traits, and he was drafted to be developed into a better player in the NFL than he was in college. And so you want to see just how high that ceiling might be, right? It was the unlimited ceiling that was most intriguing about him. And so, like I can think of looking around the NFL, right? Like clutch interior pass rushers. Chris Jones of the Chiefs, I think, fits that category. When they need a big play, Chris Jones can make a big play for Kansas City. Jalen Carter is starting to look like that for Philadelphia, although he's on a really good defensive line. So I think that makes his job look easier because you also have Milton Williams, who's been a pretty clutch pass rusher for them. Cam Hayward has been that guy for a while. As he gets older, that might not be the case for as long. Maybe Dexter Lawrence, but it's more of a nose tackle type position. There aren't that many guys. I've just been mentioned like 4 or 5, but like who else? I mean, Leonard Williams, not really. Ed Oliver in Buffalo, maybe sometimes. Jeffrey Simmons in Tennessee, maybe sometimes. Keanu Benton in Pittsburgh. I mean, these guys have occasional moments, but like they're just handful of guys across the league, and every team has multiple interior pass rushers. So Javon Dexter becoming that is, I think, just generally unlikely. It's because it's unlikely for any defensive tackle, especially a second-round pick, to develop into this kind of game-changing, dynamic, take-over-the-game type of player. He could still develop to be a great player, a very good player, but maybe not that. I mean, that's just, I think it's possible. He has the physical tools, and if the coaching and the mental development and the technique and that and all that stuff, like if the brain can make the body work to perfection, he has the raw tools to be able to do so. It's just hard for any raw tools to be something that great. Or what about like Jaquan Brisker? Like injuries are obviously a big part of this question. I think there have been times when he gets lost on a play or makes mistakes to where like I don't know that he's not there yet, right? In terms of like it's 4th and 5. Is he going to take away the tight end in coverage? Is he going to step up and make the perfect play in the running game, or is he going to miss sometimes, right? Like sometimes he misses, and that's okay. He's been a young player, he's been developing, but like, and now you add on the injury, like he's not there yet. But if Jaquan Brisker avoids concussions from here on out and continues to try and develop and grow, like he's a guy you could see being that type of player. I mean, again, I still feel like he can still be a great safety and not be this type of safety, and that's okay. He's a second-round pick, not very many safeties. Like, again, how many of these clutch game-changing safeties are there in the NFL? It felt like Xavier McKinney became one for the Green Bay Packers, this past season in particular. I mean, I think there's probably more safeties as we think about like a larger list of this around the NFL than there would be interior pass rushers that are truly clutch guys. But I also feel like we've moved a little bit past the days of the truly great safeties. Like Kirby Joseph did some of this for Detroit this season. I don't know, Brill Peppers has had those moments in the past, but maybe not anymore. Jesse Bates in Atlanta. Like there's a handful of them, but it's also okay that these players don't become that way. Because not every player is, and that's okay. You just need to make sure you have a handful of them on your roster. I will say this whole conversation kind of already biases against offensive linemen, because like someone like Darnell Wright, can he be a game changer, a difference maker? Can your right tackle make a clutch play? Like he just needs to be good in pass protection every time. So it's hard for offensive linemen to really fit in this category. But it does speak to me. I think one of the other things to keep in mind here is one other opportunity for the Bears to get another one of these type of players is with their first-round pick this year, right? If you hit this first-round pick, whether that's Ashton Genty at running back being a dynamic, game-changing, special playmaker in a key moment, or whether that's one of these pass rushers, like James Pierce from Tennessee or Mike Green from Marshall or, Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. I don't think Abdul Carter from Penn State's going to fall that far, but like, if you can get with that 10th pick, like that pass rusher, that not in year one, not as a rookie are they going to be that guy, but essentially the Roma Dunze equivalent for the defensive line in a couple of seasons. Can they be a super clutch playmaking game changer on the defensive line that's going to make that big sack that we talked about, like Montez Sweat, 4th down, got to have that play, or got to make a play in the running game, got to shed the block and make the tackle in the backfield. You need those players, and you really, I think your only options of adding new ones are through the draft and developing those players, or big splash free agent trade type of moves like Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, etc. Like these kind of players generally don't hit the open market. You usually have to trade for them, like Montez Sweat. And, I guess every once in a while you get a Danielle Hunter type of situation, but that was probably about it for last offseason as far as like guys that are truly game-changing, game-breaking players that are worth really putting all that money in. And it's part of why I'm not as keen on spending $22 million a year on Trey Smith, because offensive linemen just can't have that individual impact on the game in a key clutch. If your right guard has the play of his life on 4th and 3, that it doesn't end up making the difference between you winning that game and you losing that game. Like, he just needs to be good enough. But the difference between a good enough offensive line and a great offensive line doesn't necessarily mean a ton. Whereas a good enough wide receiver versus a great wide receiver, or a good enough pass rusher versus a great pass rusher, like, those are bigger impact moments and plays and things that can affect your team. And so that's something I want to keep in mind as we go through this offseason for the Bears and through this next year with Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen, is who emerges as these types of special players and who shrinks a little bit and doesn't feel like they are as special as maybe we first thought they were when the Bears brought them in. Certainly, if there's any kind of blockbuster moves to add one of these players, or if anything changes for these players already on the roster, you can be sure we're going to break it down for you right here in the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you come back tomorrow and make Locked On Bears your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.